It's been a long time coming, but we finally have this video coming out. For those who don't know, in my last video, I mentioned that this is my last major project of the year. The project being a comparison of every piece of IT media against the book, since I just recently finished reading the whole thing, after 5 to 6 months on and off. There will be spoilers all across the board here, but when talking about the movies and the books, I'll try to keep them to a minimum, such as what they kept out and left in. I'll leave my full review on the book until the end so we can account for any differences. Because believe me, ladies and gentlemen, there's a freaking lot. For crying out loud, this book is over 1,000 pages. That being said, let's start off with the miniseries back in 1990. I watched this on Amazon and it had all of it condensed into a 3-hour film, which funnily enough isn't long enough to cover this gargantuan story by Stephen King. As far as similarities go, the miniseries follows the same structure as the book, mainly with it ping-ponging back and forth from adults to children. This is crucial as this is how the book tells its story and gets us invested into the Losers Club, Derry, and Pennywise. The members of the Losers Club are fairly faithful with their character arcs being kept intact. I also love how they had it transform into the different identities such as the werewolf, the mummy, the leper, etc. This was an important aspect as it showed that the losers encountered it in their own way and it helped them to connect and bond better. The miniseries keeps the skeleton of the story but cuts a ton of complexity, cosmic mythology, character depth, gore, and darker elements. With regard to the tone, it is fairly dark in nature, dealing with graphic violence, psychological horror, child abuse, and sexual content, and it is deeply cosmic and mind-bending in certain aspects. However, since this was adapted for network TV back in 1990, a good amount of it had to be cleaned up to be presentable. It focused more on suspense and mood, pretty much had no gore or explicit content. In the book, the main years were 1958 and 1985, the former relevant to the main cast as kids, and the latter being when they are adults. In the miniseries, it was 1960 and 1990. Not a deal breaker for me, but a difference nonetheless. In the novel, Pennywise is just one of its forms. The true form exists in the macroverse beyond space and time. It features the Deadlights, which are horrific, sanity-shattering, cosmic energy. Introduces Maturin, the cosmic turtle, a godlike being who opposes it. And the final battle includes the ritual of Chud, a mind-to-mind battle. In the miniseries, it removes the cosmic elements, the ritual of Chud, the mythologies, and more. Pennywise is treated like a supernatural serial killer with illusions, and the Deadlights are referenced but not really explored. I can't even really fault the miniseries since it is a victim of its own runtime. Due to that, it had to simplify some of the characters and their backgrounds. For instance, Beverly is harmed a lot, both by her father Al Marsh and her husband Tom Rogan. In the show, it is implied but not nearly as detailed as the book. Eddie in the book is a hypochondriac by fault of his mother, and he explores his self-worth and confidence. In the show, his mother is overbearing but toned down from her book counterpart. Mike is a town's historian, so therefore his chapters are extensive. He keeps that same role but with less depth due to the limited screen time. Henry Bowers is a deeply terrifying, disturbed teen influenced by it to carry out heinous activities. In the miniseries, he's still the bully but feels like a caricature of himself. The extra narrative pieces from the book would have helped to flesh out his character. For example, his dad and Mike's dad going way back, and not in a good way either. Now, let's talk about some missing / changed events from the book, shall we? Where do I even start? We have the smoke hole ritual where Richie and Mike witness the origin of it, the sewer bonding scene, which I'm very glad they left out. If you know, you know. We're also missing the Black Spot event, which is one of my favorite pieces of lore from the book, the Bradley gang shootout, Adrian Mellon's murder, the fact that Audra, Bill's wife, has a larger emotional role and presence in the book, the removal of Patrick Hockstetter, one of King's most disturbing characters, and the most disturbing character I have ever encountered, and the origin of Derry and how it created the town around itself. How could I also forget that downtown Derry didn't collapse after the fall of it? I'll leave more of this explanation for the book section, but that's another key detail completely wiped from the viewing experience here. In regards to Derry, it is a character, corrupt and alive, molded by it. This is reflected in the town's history of murders, disasters, and racism, all of which is fleshed out in the books. In the 90s version, Derry is kind of generic and there are a few flashbacks about the brutal past of it. As for the endings, the books was more bittersweet, melancholic and tragic. The one change I did like in the miniseries was the fact that I got to see my losers have a happy ending. Now, before we continue on, I must let you guys know that I have already watched the 2017 and 2019 film releases of it, but I haven't watched them since they came out. That being said, I just recently watched the 2017 one, and boy, do I got some thoughts. One of the similarities is that this edition keeps the every 27 years timeline, as in the miniseries it was every 30 years. In terms of casting, the 2017 version knocked it out of the park. Everything from the visuals of the kids to how they behave is fairly faithful to their book counterparts. They nailed Eddie being a hypochondriac, Bill being the natural leader, Richie being a smartass, and Stan being a warrior and more. I did hate how during the blood oath scene that it was Bill who enacted that whole sequence, when instead it was Stan who initiated the cutting of the palms while Bill asked them to swear it individually, loud and proud, which is tweet tier. This was where the 90s version absolutely nailed it. That being said, this movie nailed the spirit of the scene with regards to unity and the camaraderie of the Losers Club, who I absolutely adore. A good amount of the key story beats were retained, such as Georgie's death, the bathroom blood scene, and the rock fight. However, in regards to each kid getting their own scare, I didn't like how it was executed. In the book, it felt that you had moments to breathe in between these horrors. However, in the film, it was sandwiched together, one after the other, feeling rushed. That being said, I am aware that this is a product of its runtime. It definitely would work better as a TV show due to the sheer amount of content in this epic book that Stephen King wrote. That is why I'm hyped to watch Welcome to Derry. Back to the 2017 film. The movie keeps the emotional spine but changes pretty much everything about structure, mythology, character arcs, and themes to fit the big screen, which is such a damn shame. Because while it is a long book, the point of it is to feel that you're experiencing a journey alongside the losers and learn more about Derry, it, the turtle, and more. I've already mentioned this before, but in the book, it weaves in telling the story through the years 1958 and 1985. It Chapter 1 covers the late 80s and only the main cast's time as children, not as adults. This removes the aspect of memory loss and extra trauma. Similar to the 90s version, the deadlights are shown but not explained. Cosmic turtles are absent, and there is no cosmic mythology. The film focuses more on visceral horror and not cosmic horror. Because while it is terrifying, and believe me, it is, what makes it so truly terrifying is how it can take the form of whatever the kids are terrified of, its influence on the town of Derry, and how it's been around forever and more. With horror like this, there's no real need for the jump scares, since that's not where the horror lies with Stephen King. Some of the most horrifying events and characters aren't even it or Pennywise. Pennywise in the book doesn't nearly have as much time as the screen counterpart. What I mean by that is that it in the book is in there for about 30 to 40% at most. The rest is the stuff surrounding it. Similar to the 90s version, the lore of the town is downplayed, which sucks since it plays a much bigger role in the novel. For instance, there's the case of the Black Spot, the Bradley Gang, and the Kitchener Ironwork explosions, which was the most touched on out of the three of these. Now let's talk about the characters. You spend a lot, and when I mean a lot, I mean 1,000+ pages with the Losers Club. You know what makes them tick, what they're afraid of, the quirks, and more. So it hurts my heart to see some of the changes they made to my beloved group here. Keep in mind, I love this film ever since I first watched it way back, and it is a good chunk of the reason I even read the book. So keep that in mind as I talk my crap. Bill's character is amazing, however, it is lacking the full extent of his loneliness and how he's a ghost at his own house, and how that's something he's had to deal with growing up as a kid. This really added a layer to him as it showed the lack of love he received from his parents and how they were processing their grief over Georgie. So to see that shot out of the film sucks to me. Beverly Marsh, easily one of my favorites in the club. What the actual hell did they do to her? Mind you, up until a certain point, she was amazing, being the backbone of the club and one of the more confident members, as seen with jumping into the water off the cliff and initiating the rock fight. Then, at some point, she was turned into a damsel in distress. Like, what the actual heck? They got me feeling like that meme of Ben Affleck in the blue sweater smoking the cigarette. This was one of the other things the miniseries nailed, with giving her the slingshot and the silver bullets, which are both pivotal tools in their fight against it and establishing Beverly's role as their sharpshooter, which was universally agreed on by everybody else. So to see her get reduced to this was beyond insulting. In the novel, Ben was the architect of the group and had an intuitive sense of how to build things even for the first time. In the movie, they phased that out and gave him the historian role. This would be fine and all, however, this is Mike's freaking role, which essentially just relegates Mike to being the token black friend of the group, which is just as insulting, if not more, than what they did to Beverly. Mike is easily the most important member of the club. He's their historian and is the reason why everyone, minus Dan, came back to Derry. So when you do this, along with Killer's parents, you remove so many layers that were crucial in the book. Richie is a massive highlight for me in this movie, but I do hate how they removed his encounter with the werewolf on 29 Neibolt Street with Bill, and them both seeing the objects in the photos in Georgie's room start to move and affect them physically, such as cutting Bill. These bits were crucial in getting Richie to understand Bill and the true horror that plagues Derry and the Losers Club. While I think Eddie's character and his arc was fine, I believe that his arc would have benefited from a TV show, especially in regards to his dynamic with his mother, such as the shoe store scene and the one of them in the hospital when Eddie gets his arm broken by Henry Bowers. The remove/change scenes were very similar to the miniseries, such as the Smoke Hole Ritual, Turtle, Patrick Hockstetter's arc, the Black Spot Fire History, and Adrian Bellin's death. Also, compared to the miniseries, the violence is toned up to an 11 out of 10 here. The most glaring example is Georgie's death right at the very beginning. I really loved getting to see the Neibolt house expand how it was described in the books, and as it was larger on the inside than it was on the outside, being heavily deceiving. I can't believe I forgot to mention the giant bird that Mike meets as a kid, which ties back to when his dad saw it way back. This is why I was fuming about his parents not being around. The book ending was more of a battle of minds, the ritual of Chud, as where in the film it's more physical and just the kids affirming that they weren't scared of Pennywise. This made it look more pathetic because while the kids did gain confidence in the book as well, it didn't downplay how terrifying it could be. I also hate how Beverly is rescued by Ben's kiss like the dude was Prince Charming or something. She deserved better, bro. This isn't right. I could slander this movie even more, but I want to leave my criticisms here. For what the film is trying to do, it's great. But if you're a movie only watcher person, then you're better off keeping it that way, because it's going to infuriate you to read the book and notice how they butcher some of the storytelling and characters here. I'm gonna rewatch it chapter 2 and then I'll get back to y'all soon.
2,000 years later.
Yeah, I just watched the movie, and to quote a wise man, I thought this film sucked when I initially saw it, and it's somehow even worse after having read the book. What also hurt was the fact that there could have been potential for this to have been better than what it was. For starters, let's get the obvious out the way. Chapter 2 did not need the 3-hour runtime. Trying to condense the journey, character arcs, and lore from the book will naturally only dilute them and create a worse off product. The potential in here came from the great casting, with everyone matching their descriptions to me, and some of the retconning here. For those that don't know, retcon is short for retroactive continuity. This is used in fictional storytelling where facts and events that were previously established through the story are changed, ignored, or contradicted by new information and details brought about. Before I crap on this thing any further, let me try to give this adaptation some props with the similarities they portrayed. They got the reunion right with the 27-year time difference, having Mike being the one who brings everybody back, minus Stanley due to him taking his own life and having the memories resurface. They also managed to keep the spirit of the adult core arcs, with Bill being haunted by his guilt over Georgie's death. Beverly was in an abusive marriage that mirrored her relationship with her dad during her childhood. Eddie is still overtly fearful and worried. Richie hides pain behind humor. Ben became a successful engineer but was still empty on the inside in a certain way. And Mike was the keeper of memory and responsibility. As far as iconic set pieces go, they did fairly well with the Chinese restaurant reunion, the return trips to childhood locations, the deadlights were visually represented, and having the final confrontation in its lair beneath Derry. Some themes from the book are partially preserved, such as the fact that trauma does not disappear but it merely lingers. Memories can be painful but are quite necessary, and facing fear together is the only way to survive. Before I get into the differences, I want to let you guys know that I don't need a one-to-one perfect adaptation of everything in the book. But when you leave out important pieces of lore rush character arcs, or change pivotal aspects of the story, then that's when you'll start to lose me. Like, for instance, I've heard that's often been the case with The Shining. I've only watched the movie, but I've heard that the reason it's held in such high regard is the fact that it keeps the spirit of the book fairly well. This is why I believe some fans are more forgiving with some of the liberties that Stanley Kubrick took when making that film. Back to It Chapter 2. With regards to the differences, this is where the movie starts to become its own thing, which starts to turn some heads, mine included. For example, the structure and pacing become a mess, not only with the 3-hour runtime, but the fact that it was mainly an adult narrative with flooded flashbacks as opposed to those stories being told side by side. It also felt episodic and repetitive, which didn't leave much to the imagination with some of the jump scares. And they also had the losers split up to retrieve these artifacts, which is something that's never mentioned in the actual book. The book felt cyclical and the events were bound to happen, but here it feels like a side quest checklist. We also have the ritual of Chud being drastically altered. Mind you, this is one of the most important parts of the book with all the build up and is a key moment that helps the losers defeat it. For instance, in the book, the ritual is an ancient metaphysical duel, a psychic battle of wills against a cosmic entity. Bill battles it in the macroverse with assistance from Richie. Matron the turtle makes an appearance and provides guidance, with it relating to the themes of belief, identity, and existential courage. In chapter 2, it is reimagined into a scavenger hunt, with each of the losers retrieving a personal token, and they are each burned in a ritual circle. In the film, there's no turtle, no macroverse, and the ritual fails anyway. The impact this leaves is that the ritual loses all cosmic and philosophical meaning. Now, let's talk about everyone's favorite dancing clown, Pennywise. In the novel, Pennywise is vast and incomprehensible, with the clown being a form that it takes, its true form being the Deadlights, with it existing beyond time and space, existing way before Derry was created, and the fact that it cannot truly be understood but only opposed. Meanwhile, in the film, they reduce Pennywise to merely just this clown that turns into a spider at the end and is then defeated by being mocked, insulted, and bullied until it shrinks and has its heart yanked out. Are you freaking kidding me? This is how they beat a cosmic god? I knew it was BS when I watched this back in 2019, but it's even worse having read the book and knowing what should have went on. Before I get too heated, let's talk about character differences, because there's a few of them. Bill runs off to do his own side quest, and that scene with the kid in the funhouse agitated me. Like, I felt that it could have been done away with entirely. Beverly somehow feels less important here, is given the power of prophecy, and finds her way back to the light through hearing Ben's voice. Now, while this wasn't as egregious as Ben's Prince Charming act in the end of chapter 1, it still left a sour taste in my mouth. Mike got retconned to be the town's historian, which was a good thing, but they sullied his character by having him lie about the ritual, drugging Bill, his good friend, leaving him morally compromised. How you managed to ruin one of the best characters is beyond me. Richie is given a gay identity in chapter 2, which on its own doesn't faze me, but it feels like it wasn't fleshed out enough besides a mere flashback to when he was a kid. I also kinda hated how they handled Eddie's death, with him cracking jokes towards the end. This film kind of missed the mark in some cases with the humor, as to where I feel that chapter 1 nailed it in that sense. Stanley taking his own life was changed in the film, and not for the better. When I watched this back then, I felt that something was wrong, but I couldn't quite explain it. But with the book, it feels like an insult to injury. In the book, his suicide was a result of how terrified he was of it and his experiences with it. He literally chooses to die by his own hands, then encounter it again. This showed the harsh reality of the toll that a cosmic being can have on you, and despite making a promise back when you were a kid, it won't defeat that feeling. In the adaptation, Stanley taking his own life is reframed as purposeful and as if he was doing the rest of the gang a favor. Like, no way anyone else is buying this crap. Now, let's talk about the place where all this takes place in, Derry. In the novel, Derry is complicit in the harm that occurs to the children. Racism, violence, and apathy are a part of it as well. In the film, that is kept in and even lightly touches upon the symbiosis that the town has with it. With regards to the ending, the end of the journey in the book was bittersweet and melancholic. However, in the movie, they change it so that the losers actually get a happy ending and remember each other. This is a bigger change, but it doesn't bother me as much because after experiencing the book, I just want to see my losers happy, especially with the losses that they have taken. This will conclude my chapter 2 section, y'all. I'm writing the script in between watching everything, and right now I'm up to Welcome to Derry. I won't say too much now since I'm only halfway through, but man, oh man, is that show freaking amazing.
The next day,
What's good, y'all? I just spent the last few days catching up to the show in between work and everything else, and man, this is goated television. Welcome to Derry is without a doubt the best adaptation / version of this book. This only further cemented what I said earlier in this video, that this type of story needs to be told in a TV style format. This way they don't have to rush scenes in order to get a stupid jump scare and focus on super dumb scenes. While I'm sad there's no more episodes out yet, there is a silver lining. We're getting 2 more seasons, and this has been confirmed by the director Andy Muschietti, who made the previous 2 films. Now let's talk about how the show relates to the novel. It has the same content but different focus here. Welcome to Derry keeps King's central idea that Derry is a rotten small town molded by an old evil in the form of Pennywise / it, but it expands the lore, gives secondary characters bigger arcs, and leans into serialized storytelling such as getting a peek into the daily lives of these characters, their perspectives, and slower reveals. Now let's talk about why this adaptation works for TV despite it not being a 1-for-1. The first reason is that the serialized pacing allows for the world building to breathe. TV gives room for day-to-day episodes that introduce smaller characters, expands the town's social textures, and lets the dread accumulate across weeks. Welcome to Derry uses that breathing room to show how fear and prejudice are everyday things in the town until they become catastrophic. For example, the Black Spot episode, and more on that later. The second reason is that it's an ensemble medium advantage. TV is great at developing secondary characters. The show leans into family dynamics, institutions, and cultures in a way that the novel can't necessarily capture, playing to its own strength. Prequel freedom gives it new stakes. As a prequel, the show can explore origins and casualties, which gives meaningful modern commentary while still connecting to the novel's themes about complicity and forgetting. I also love how this show handles the lore from the book, because lore gives a place history and it makes it feel somewhat real. For instance, in this case of the Black Spot fire. In the novel, it is referred to as one of Derry's tragedies, an incident of racially motivated catastrophe that King uses to illustrate the town's moral rot. In the show, it becomes fully realized and visually brutal, showing the horrors of racism through the arson attack, shootings, and more. The series dramatizes the event instead of merely referencing it, making it one of the show's most harrowing set pieces, and using it to show how human evil and Pennywise's influence intersect. This was easily my favorite piece of lore from the book, as this is one of Mike Hanlon's interludes, and the story is told through his dad, Will Hanlon, who was there. Now this is how you do a damn adaptation. You keep the spirit of the original scene the same, and a good amount of its contents, while taking liberties with certain people or elements in order to heighten the emotional impact. For example, in the book, there were no children present at that incident, and the incident didn't start over Hank Grogan. In the book, the fire was started up by the group called the Legion of White Decency, and yes, I know that's an insane name. They started the fire because the Black Spot started getting way too popular, and they didn't want the black people to have too much influence in Derry. Another reason I was glad this wasn't a 1-to-1 is because we get one of my favorite scenes with Rich, who unfortunately dies protecting Marge, and has some of the sweetest pieces of dialogue with her from the entire season. Especially the bit when he was gushing about how he first met her and how she was beautiful to him. It perfectly captured what it felt like to be a kid, minus the place burning down around him. It was just so sweet and honest that I couldn't help but smile, you know? That's one of the themes that the show captured greatly from the book that I loved. Now, let's talk about Dick Halloran and why he's vital here. The show turns him from a brief novel mention into a major character. His shine ability places him front and center in a lot of the conflict and mystery surrounding Derry. This paired with the direct reference to him joining the Overlook Hotel at the season finale, which is a direct tie-in to The Shining. The theme song of Welcome to Derry is so chilling yet infectious at the same time, in a way that I can only describe as beautiful. It perfectly encapsulates the vibe of the show. It's beautiful at first, but then it progressively gets more ugly with the visuals in the background that accompany it. Also, this show is brutal, as if the black spot alone did not portray that clearly enough. Not that I'm squeamish, but I am surprised that they didn't censor certain things. For example, the episode where Marge's eye bulged out like the snails and she mutilated it because she hated the way that it looked had me more shook and disgusted. I don't know what the general consensus is on the CGI of this show, but I really enjoyed it along with the actual production and design. From the way they would show Halloran in one of his visions and then panning back to the real world, the transition of certain characters as adults and kids, and the camera work in episode 7 is an 11 out of 10, genuinely perfect to me. I also love the callbacks to the Losers Club with Pennywise straight up telling Marge about her future son, Richie Tozier, and Beverly's cameo with the death of her mother at Juniper Hill. I'm a sucker for connections, parallels, and storytelling like this. Also, the ending of that first episode, genuinely, my jaw dropped to the floor with the way that ended. Because I was like, okay, we got ourselves a nice little group here, and this can be the losers before they were established. And come those last few minutes, I had nothing to say, as that was all taken away from me. If that ending doesn't get you to watch the rest of the season, then I don't know what to tell you, gang. I know there's probably more that I missed out on from here, but I want to get to the book because boy, we got some things to talk about. Boy, oh boy, where do I even start with this gargantuan size brick we call a novel? While it gets labeled a horror book, it is so much more than that. To me, it is a beautiful coming of age story mixed in with some history lessons and then a dash of horror. Keep in mind, Pennywise isn't as prominent in the book as he is in the film and TV adaptations. One of the greatest achievements is making Derry Main feel alive, not just a setting, but as a character of its own. Derry isn't haunted, it's complicit. King fills the novel with stuff from the newspaper, oral histories and accounts, town legends, and repeated disasters that coincide with it. What makes this special is the scale. Evil isn't isolated to Pennywise. It's embedded in racism, domestic abuse, apathy, and more. Pennywise not only influences these events, but he feeds on what's already there. This level of world building is something no adaptation fully captures because film and TV naturally focus on characters and plot momentum. The book has the luxury of lingering and taking its time. Now, let's talk about the character arcs as they make up a good amount of the book. Every member of the Losers Club feels like a real person and not just a trope. Each loser's adult life is a warped echo of their childhood trauma. Bill turns guilt into leadership, Beverly escapes her father only to marry him in another form, Eddie replaces his mother with a wife who's equally as controlling, Ben loses weight but never insecurity, Richie hides terror behind comedy, Stan chooses death rather than to face the irrational, and Mike becomes memory's guardian, alone, burdened, and necessary. What makes these arcs work is that King doesn't romanticize survival. Growing up doesn't fix our past problems, it just provides us with new ways to cope with them, whether for better or for worse. This is where the novel surpasses every adaptation without a doubt. What it does great as a horror novel are the psychological and human aspects to it. Some of the scariest moments don't even include Pennywise. Bill living as a shadow in his own family after Georgie's death, Ben being hunted by Bowers, Chris and Huggins, the black spot, and Eddie realizing his sickness were created by his mother. Forgetting is not just a trauma response, it's a part of the curse. The further away the losers get, the less about Derry they remember. This shows that victory requires remembering things that your brain wants to erase. The macroverse, deadlights, and the turtle suggest a far bigger universe than we can comprehend, giving us the sense of insignificance through the losers and their journey. I love this book, but it definitely isn't perfect, and I'll mention some things that give validity to this point. The most glaring and obvious one is the excessive length and pacing issues. There are entire chapters that detour into Derry's history and characters that have no real relevance to the plot, the overwritten descriptions of damn near everything and everyone, and references that can feel somewhat outdated depending on who you're talking to. The worst of all these is the infamous sewer scene. And dear goodness, if there was ever a time I wish my eyes were to be bleached, it was that instance. I knew it was coming after hearing about it from a friend, but that didn't really make it any better. If anything, it just braced me for it. This is 5 children running a train on their only female friend, as it was suggested by her. It felt unnecessary and disgusting, and definitely could have been done differently. Why children need to be doing all that, especially when fighting a cosmic god, is beyond comprehension. On top of that, Beverly suffered abuse from her dad so much, and we live with her in those POVs. So why would it make sense for her to initiate this at all if I even wanted to give it the benefit of the doubt? Even the people that I've seen on YouTube and book reviews who try to understand it or even defend it say that it's still disgusting, and it gives people valid reason to look at the last portion of the book funny. Some major elements from the book that no on-screen version fully covers is Maturin the Turtle, who is the opposite of Pennywise and is a key portion in the losers' battle with it as kids. The true ritual of Chud has yet to be done justice. We have yet to cover the Bradley gang shootout, the Kitchener Ironworks explosion, and a few more events. Also, Patrick Hockstetter was adapted, but he kinda had to be sanitized, because if there ever was a true copy of him, dear me, I think it would be R18+. He's a proper sociopath, the scariest character in the book above Pennywise. Doesn't see the world as real, steals animals and stuffs them into freezers, killing them, and even murdered his baby brother, all because he hated change to his routine. One of my favorite scenes towards the end is when Eddie, as a kid, stands up to this evil eyeball when everyone else is scared. It's great because Eddie is the most fragile member of the club and usually the most scared. Mind you, he did this with a broken arm. It was so beautiful and badass, showing his moment of growth over the course of hundreds of pages. Also like how he made me sympathize with Henry Bowers. This is a horrible kid. Like, half the things he does are the definition of insane. But even then, King makes me understand why he is the way that he is and his dynamic with his father. This fleshes out his character and gives us more understanding why he hates the Hanlon family so much, as in his eyes, they have wronged his father. Also, that ending line with the "I loved you guys, you know, I loved you so much." This comes after defeating it as adults and is written from Mike's perspective. The losers start to realize that they're forgetting their memories and acknowledge that they're leaving behind Eddie, Stan, and the memory of each other. This, in conjunction with the last section of the book, minus the sewer scene, was genuinely perfect to me. I will fight anybody on that point. When we're talking about the novel, we also got to talk about King's prose. I like to refer to it as beautifully simple, mainly conversational, and there will be moments where he will just say something or describe someone in a way that is just breathtaking. One of my favorite quotes / lines that describes this beautifully goes along like this: Ben Hanscom had no sense of being lonely because he had never been anything but. Not only is this my favorite line next to Mike's last view at the end, but it was a beautiful description of Ben as a child. Without context, it's a good line, and in context, even better. The same can be said for this next one. The timing was just right enough so that things worked out wrong for everyone. This is referring to the killing of Adrian Mellon and that whole situation. And what's even crazier is that King based this off a real life event that mirrors that of Charlie Howard, who was attacked for his sexual orientation. There's way more here, but I don't want to rattle off all my highlights. These are just to say that it is a phenomenal book and a journey worth taking. It understands that evil thrives where people look away, childhood trauma doesn't just disappear, and memories are painful, but forgetting is worse. The adaptations excel in horror entertainment. Meanwhile, the novel succeeds at examining life stories regarding fear and guilt. If you can tolerate its excess, it'll reward you with something rare. A horror story that doesn't just scare you, it'll stay with you the way old memories do. This was amazing. I'm currently reading Razorblade Tears right now, and I'm about almost halfway through, and dude, it's so good. Y'all will probably get a gaming based video sometime next month or February. Either way, thanks for being patient with me and allowing me to cook. Thanks for watching, and this is Black Sugar 11 out.